friends, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to the color comparing series. This series is where I compare colors I currently own, and what I'm more looking at is comparing the colors that are available here in the country of Belize, especially the popular ones, to colors that I had to import. The reason for this is to see if there's any shifting or differences in those colors, and not necessarily to judge the colors that are here in Belize, but to show that they are characteristically different, or well, yeah, it is to come some kind of discernment, but to see if they're how different they are from more professional brands. Just to recap, we did ultramarine, put on some light here. We did ultramarine blue PB29, lemon yellow PY3, phthalo blue and cerulean blue, phthalo PB15, cerulean blue PB35 and PB36, but for the most part, most of the cerulean blue that I have here are PB35. And finally, we ended on yellow ochre, which is PY42 or PY43, and cadmium yellow, which can be PY37 and PY35. Okay, I think I should also point out, it's very important to point out here that in the country of Belize, the two paints that are available for student artists are the Marie's watercolor paint, the Stylex Aquaflavin or the Stylex watercolor paint, and the we don't have Paul Rubens, and we have Sargent Art watercolor tube paints. Those are the colors that are available. So today we'll be looking at Cobalt Blue and Fuchsia Blue. Now, Cobalt Blue is a color I do have in pigment form or pigment powder, and that is PB28. As you can see here, it is a very high blue color, I like to think of it as, and it can be granulating or staining depending on the version you have. I also have the Paul Rubens and Winsor & Newton. Unfortunately, Stylex with Marie's and Sargent Art does not have a version of this in the set that I currently own, but this is just to give you because I had multiple colors of it, I decided to put it in this. Fuchsia Blue, on the other hand, is a color that Marie's has and Sargent Art has. However, my Fuchsia Blue that I have as my handmade watercolor paint is actually a colon Fuchsia Blue. So the colon will mean that it has a derivative, or it's a version of Fuchsia Blue and not Fuchsia Blue. So my Fuchsia Blue is colon 1, which makes it a Fuchsia Blue green shade. So it might be a little more warmer than the other Fuchsia Blue, which is only PB27. Now, both Sargent Art and Marie's has a version of Fuchsia Blue, so I'll need to use the Paul Rubens one because they said their Fuchsia Blue is only PB27 versus mine. And as you can see, something's up with this Marie's Fuchsia Blue. It is very blue. Now, I've always thought as Fuchsia Blue as a dark blue, almost going towards black. So their Fuchsia Blue is very blue. It has a very high blue stainage. Same thing with the Sargent Art Fuchsia Blue. Their Fuchsia Blue also has a very high blue stainage versus the Paul Rubens, which is more on the muted side. I did not say it is bad. I mean, we can learn to work with products. I mean, we're Belizean. We know how to improvise and imaginate things beyond their actual usage. So we know how to work with a very blue Fuchsia Blue. Now, the next three pigments that we're going to be looking at is Crimson, Carmine, and Vermilion. Marie's, Stylex do say they have a crimson in there, so I'll be contrasting that with M. Graham's alizarin crimson, the PR204, Urith alizarin crimson, which is, they said their alizarin crimson is PR83. Sennelier called their alizarin crimson. They actually have three pigments for their alizarin crimson. PV83. Is that PV or PR? I think it's PV83. PY or PR? What did I wrote? PY209 and PR 179. Let me go and double check that. Okay, I double checked, and yeah, I'm correct. I did wrote that down. PV 83, PY 209, and PR 179. It has a light pass rating of 3. That's interesting. I'll just have to double check that on their website, and I will put it in this link if I am wrong about that, about the pigment consistency or of their alizarin crimson. I will put it as a point of note here. Also, Winsor & Newton, China, they have a crimson, and they call that PR 170 and PV 23. So basically, guys, there is no one pigment that is within the alizarin crimson range that I currently own. But again, I will do some research on handprint.com, and I will put it in this video as I edit to show you guys what handprint.com says alizarin crimson pigment is, or the most popular form of alizarin crimson. But back to the point of note, if we should use Mgram and Sennelier, because those are two reputable brands for the alizarin crimson color, it looks like this very cool kind of red, you know, almost on the red muted side. However, Urith, Marie's, and Winsor & Newton China, I dare say, have their red as very, very warm, or their alizarin crimson as very, very warm. Stylex, on the other hand, the alizarin crimson that Stylex have, or the crimson that Stylex have, is also kind of muted, but I think it's the fillers that Stylex use in this that makes it has a very creamy kind of look to it. Makes it looks a little more creamy than both the Sennelier and the Mgram. The next color we're looking at is Carmine. Now, according to this, Sennelier does have a representation of Carmine, and it calls that PV19, but I will again look at handprint.com and find out their version of what Carmine pigment is most popularly known as, and I will put that here in the video when I edit. And here, if we use Sennelier as our control, then it does match what Artistic Isle says is Carmine, and Artistic Isle has a version here. However, Artistic Isle, even though she is a handmade watercolorist, she does not provide, when at the time when I purchased these from her, she did not provide pigment names to them, so I would not know what pigment she used in her Carmine. But Sargent Art, who does have a version of Carmine, does mimic somewhat the Sennelier one. Finally, we are looking at Vermilion. Now, all Sargent Art, Stylex, and Marie's have version of Vermilion. Winsor & Newton China has a version of Vermilion, and Sennelier has a version of French Vermilion. Now, Vermilion is a red, even though it is a red that looks very orange. Therefore, it's a red that is very, very warm, but it is a red. Winsor & Newton China says their Vermilion is made from PR 112 and PR 83, whereas Sennelier said that their Vermilion is made from PR 242. And as you can see here, I think it's Winsor & Newton China's Vermilion looks very, very warm compared to the cool version that Sennelier has. And the Marie's mimic more, to me, in my opinion, the Vermilion from the Winsor & Newton versus the Stylex and the Sargent Art, which mimics the Vermilion more from Sennelier. Again, I will do some research on handprint.com and put that information of what handprint.com says the most popular version of Vermilion pigment is. Okay, I think we went kind of long for Vermilion, so let's use this as our last one. This is Payne's Gray. I thought I did not do Fusion, so I have it up here, but I already did the Fusion. Now, Payne's Gray comes in 3 versions of paints that I currently own: Paul Rubens, Winsor & Newton China, and Sennelier. Unfortunately, Marie's, Stylex, or Sargent Art does not provide a Payne's Gray in their tube set that I currently own. One thing I should know is that Payne's Gray is one of those colors I really want to start experimenting in making, because I think I have everything I need to make a Payne's Gray. I do have a black pigment, PBK11 Mars Black. I do have blue pigment. I currently have 4 blue pigments. I have Phthalo Blue, PB15, Cobalt Blue, PB28, Ultramarine, PB29, and Fuchsia Blue, PB27:1. So I'm thinking that maybe, I could start experimenting with color mixing while making paints. One thing I should say when swatching these out, that the Paul Rubens Payne's Gray is very, very blue compared to the neutralness of both the Winsor Newton China and the Sennelier Payne's Gray version. I'm thinking it's because Paul Rubens add PB15. Well, both of they added PB15 and PB29 to their Payne's Gray, PBK9, and that gives it an extra blueness version versus the Winsor Newton China Payne's Gray, which only has PBK7 and PB29, and the Sennelier, which has PBK15 and PBK7. Okay, guys, we're gonna end this here because it went kind of long, plus we do have a lot of stuff that I need to go research. Payne's Gray is a neutralizing kind of color, a neutral kind of color. It is more on that neutral side, but because of this version of Payne's Gray that Paul Rubens has, that has this very heavy bluish tint to it, I like to work with it as a blue because it does give me very beautiful muted greens when I mix it with yellows. But as you can see here in these two versions, it's a very neutralizing kind of color. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this journey. Thank you for all your support, and as always, stay safe, stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.